Howdy, your marketing fans, and welcome back. Let's pick up right where we left off, diving back into creating and planning out these remarketing audience lists. So the fourth list we want to create is the education section plus somebody who has greater than 2 page views. Once again, remember this is a simplified version of the lists we created in the previous couple lectures ago where we went through the website, and this is just for the sake of simplicity and just getting an understanding of this stage. The objective of the education section is to drive conversions through form, submits, and phone calls. The rules are visitors to the education pages with at least 2 page views. Once again, that at least 2 page views is going to become relevant as we deal with Google Analytics. That's where we're going to be able to set up that audience using those more dynamic attributes once you're moving away from just URL tagging. The negative lists are going to be the business section, people section, the Ally Toolbar list, and the 2 converted lists. A cookie duration of 45 days to be even more aggressive, to let this sales cycle play itself out for the education section, which even takes longer than the business and the people section, with an even more aggressive bid of $2 max CPC bid, and the ad copy promoting other educational client success stories. Then we have a more generic list of the Ally Toolbar visitors. And the Ally Toolbar visitors is interesting because the Ally Toolbar for AudioEye, it's actually a technology that could really apply across all these different verticals. It could apply to education, it could apply to business, and it could apply to the individual's people section. So this is an interesting list. We do want to remarket to this list, but we want to be careful with setting up our negative lists, because at the end of the day, this is still a less engaged visitor. Anybody who visited just this page, it's a little bit less of an engaged visitor than some of our other category specific lists. They're a little bit less likely to convert. They're more likely higher up in the funnel. The objective of this list is to drive interest in the Ally Toolbar and drive technology overview downloads. The technology overview was a resource that you could download from the Ally Toolbar page. And that's what we want. That's the conversion goal we want to really drive with this campaign. So the list rules is any visitors to the Ally Toolbar page. And obviously, as you become more sophisticated, you could add additional rules. You could say it's people who scroll down a certain amount of the page. I'm going to show you how to do that. You could say it's people who spent a certain amount of time on site. It could be returning Ally Toolbar visitors. This is just to get you a sense of the strategy and this process. The negative lists are going to be all other lists except all visitors. 90-day cookie duration, because this is going to be a less aggressive bid. But if somebody came to this site and went to the Ally Toolbar, I really want to get them back because that's our really core technology, and I want them to have a chance to at least learn more. But I'm not willing to pay that much to get them back because they're not going to convert. They're most likely not going to become a customer or submit a contact request form from this remarketing list campaign. This campaign is likely going to help them identify themselves, get into either the people section list, the business section list, or the education services list. You have a 90-day cookie duration, 40-cent max CPC bid, and obviously the ad copies to promote the features of the Ally Toolbar in a variety of settings. Now, before we go any further and get a little bit deeper into this, I want to talk about these negative lists for a second. So if you notice on the Ally Toolbar's visitors lists, I wrote down that all other lists except all visitors are going to be negative lists. Now, why? Why would I want everything else to be a negative list? Well, let me explain. It makes a lot of sense. Say, for example, take our Deborah. So Deborah comes to the site. She goes to the Ally Toolbar page. She browses around, and her cookie registers her as part of this Ally Toolbar's audience right here. Okay, excellent. And now she continues to browse, and she then jumps over to, let's say, the business section. Okay, so she views the business section, and then she, most importantly, views a case study. So now she's going to be on 2 lists, right? So she's going to be on the business section plus case study, and she's also going to be on the Ally Toolbar visitors list. So she's eligible for 2 ads. She's eligible for, let's say, the ads from this list, and she's also eligible for the ads for the Ally Toolbar visitors list. However, because she displayed more engagement in this business section plus case study view list, I want her to get this ad. I want to bid on her more aggressively. I want her to have that 30-day cookie duration. And I want her to ultimately use my campaign to accomplish this goal of ultimately getting that contact form submission from Deborah. If I don't create the business section case study view as a negative list for the Ally Toolbar visitors campaign, then if Deborah happens to be on a site, she might start seeing ads for my Ally Toolbar visitors ad group. which would be a mistake because I don't want, it's not necessarily bad. I don't necessarily, it won't hurt me if I show Deborah ads about the Ally Toolbar, but since Deborah displayed an even greater level of engagement by going to the business section, looking at a case study, identifying herself as somebody who'd be a candidate for a business as a business client, I want to really be aggressive and show her proper ads. So by adding this entire list as a negative list for the Ally Toolbar, I make sure that only Ally Toolbar visitor page visitors get these ads at this more conservative bid. And the same thing goes for the education section. If Deborah went and looked at the education section and she went to 2 page views, she'd now be on a third list, right? So she'd be on education section plus 2 page views list, and she'd also now be eligible to see these ads. So I want her, if she's on this education section plus 2 page views list, I want her to specifically see those ads and not ads for the Ally Toolbar or anything else. Which is why, if you look closely, we added the Ally Toolbar as a negative list for this educational section and 2 page views list, and we also added the Ally Toolbar as a negative list for the business section. And then you would, do the same thing over here, potentially with the people section, adding the Ally Toolbar. It all depends on your strategy. I think you're starting to get the sense of how these negative lists are used to throttle the exposure and to kind of sculpt the ad copy and the bids for the right people. If you look at the Ally Toolbar's audience list, why do we keep the all visitors list active? We're excluding every other list except the all visitors list. Well, the answer to this one is pretty straightforward. If we also excluded all visitors, and the all visitors list is made up of anybody who came to any page on the site, then they'd be contradicting each other and there would be no ads eligible to show. Because on one hand, you're telling Google you want to show ads to people who viewed the Ally Toolbar visitor, right? That would be your positive list. Anybody who viewed the Ally Toolbar page, that's somebody you want to show an ad to. And on the other hand, you're telling Google, I don't want to show an ad to anybody who viewed any page of the site. So that would be contradictory rules and the ads would not be eligible to run. So you have to leave that all visitors campaign, all visitors list active. You might be wondering, if somebody's on the all visitors list and they're also on the Ally Toolbar visitors list, wouldn't you have that similar issue where somebody might be getting these more generic ads when they're also on the Ally Toolbar visitors list, and you really want them to see these very specific ads tailored to the Ally Toolbar? The answer is yes. You could run into an issue like that, but there are ways to solve for it. For example, in this one ad group where we're targeting, let's say, Ally Toolbar visitors, we would add the Ally Toolbar visitors at a bid of 40 cents, and we could also add the all visitors list at a bid of 5 cents or 4 cents in that same ad group. And I'll show you how to set that up as we continue to progress through the course. On that same note, it's important to keep in mind that each of these different lists, we have the all visitors, these are all going to be in their own ad groups, if not in their own campaigns. You guys are all familiar with AdWords. If you're not familiar with AdWords, you got to go watch my other course on AdWords that talks about setting up ad groups and structuring ad groups inside campaigns. But each one of these remarketing lists and their negative remarketing list counterparts, their audience list or just their audience, people call them all different things, they're all going to be in their own ad group, if not in their own campaign. Inside AdWords, you could set up multiple remarketing lists, positive and negative, for every single ad group and adjust the bids accordingly. So it's important to realize, to start understanding the structure. It's not going to just be one campaign targeting all these remarketing lists. It's not going to be one ad group targeting all these remarketing lists, because if you want to really get sophisticated with using negative lists in conjunction with positive lists to really start sculpting the traffic in the right way. So if, take for example, you have the business section remarketing audience, and this includes anybody who saw the business section plus a case study. And if you notice in the negative lists, I don't have the education section as a negative list. So take, for example, you have David. David views the business section and a case study. He then goes to the education section and he has more than 2 page views on the education section. You need to make a decision as an advertiser. Do I want to consider him a business potential client, or do I want to consider him a potential client for education? Because he showed interest in both sections of the site. So in this example, what I wanted to show you was that I left off education as a negative list in this audience for this ad group, because in our case for this company, since education section potential clients are more profitable, business is more profitable than the people section, but education section is even more profitable than business. If I have a person who's eligible or who has showed interest or who has engaged with both sections, I want to show him the ads for the more profitable service, assuming that he would be in that service. Obviously, if he showed much, much more engagement towards business, you put him on a super high engagement business list, and he also maybe went to one page on the education part of the site, you would consider him a business prospect and show him business ads, and then you would, for that ad group, you would remove anything else that's not that specific category or that specific product or that specific service. However, it's going to ultimately work for your business. Moving down quickly to the last couple ones we have here, we have a converted resource download list. The objective is to drive people who downloaded a free resource to actually come back and submit a form submission or call the company. The list rules is anybody who hit the thank you page for any resource download. Negative lists are people who actually converted with a contact form, because we don't want to send ads to people who already asked for more information. A 90-day cookie duration, our aggressive bid of $3.50, because this is the person who's the most likely to convert. Somebody who downloaded a free resource already is closest to converting out of all the other lists, so I want to have the most aggressive bid naturally. And the ad copy over there will be promoting the AudioEye as a leading provider and prompt a contact form. And finally, we have our converted contact form audience list. Some companies might use a list like this in an actual campaign. In our case, we're not going to actually have a campaign. We're not going to spend any money remarketing to people who submitted a contact form. So by now you should know, if you're wondering, well, why do you even bother creating that audience? You know that by now, because we need to have a list. We need to have a bucket of people who already converted, so we don't advertise to them using negative lists. Just a quick example. Let's say we have somebody who came to the site, who viewed the people section, and they spent 2 minutes on the site, right? So you have that people section spending 2 minutes on the site. And then that person ultimately went through the funnel. They might have went to the Ally toolbar, but then they ultimately converted on the contact form, but they're still on 2 lists. In our case, they're actually on 3 lists, right? They're on the converted contact form list, they're on the Ally toolbar list, and they're also on the people section list. I want to make sure that if this person, Jack, actually went and submitted a contact form, he's not seeing these ads and these ads, because he is on these lists. And since he's on these lists, he's eligible to see those ads. The way we make him not eligible or uneligible to see those ads is by adding an audience of all people who actually converted and adding them as negatives. So you add them as a negative list here, we add them as a negative list here, negative, 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 and negative. So we make sure that in no instance are we actually advertising to people who actually converted, and that's just the specific strategy for this business. So once again, just to reiterate, this is a super important part of the process. Using what you know about your visitors to create those segments, to start planning out your ad groups, using positive and negative remarketing audiences, or positive and negative audiences, audience lists, segments, whatever you want to call them. But you're now starting to really plan out where you're spending your money, how you're going to advertise, what stage of the funnel is this person in before he sees the remarketing ad, and what stage of the funnel do I want that person to be in? What is the objective? What is the point? What is the purpose of this specific list, of this specific remarketing campaign, of this specific ad copy, and why am I spending money? How much money am I spending, and in what cookie duration am I willing to spend it? So it's complicated when you think about it, but it's also very simple once you actually set up this graph. You take out a pen and paper, you do this online in Excel, and you actually just plot it out. I promise you, once you do this, everything else will be smooth sailing from here. So what I want you guys to do as a simple, easy assignment for the end of this section, before we start really moving into the technical stuff and actually setting up these campaigns, use your business, use the lists that you've created over the course of the last few chapters, and recreate this graph for your business. Come up with your list name, your objectives for each list, the list rules, the negative lists that are going to go in each ad group, your cookie duration, your bid, and your ad copy for each one. That'll be really helpful, it'll be really important, and you're going to ultimately use that spreadsheet to go in and build out from a technical level and from a practical level and actually implement these live campaigns. So Thank you very much for watching this one. This one was super important. You guys learned a ton over here, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of you very soon in the next section.